Uncle Sam is watching as US-India trade talks gain momentum. Washington has said it will be keeping tabs on whether New Delhi continues to purchase Russian oil. It has put the spotlight on refiner giants like Nayara Energy as India underscores that the decision of where to buy lies completely with the companies. But it seems that threat remains.
If the Secretary of Commerce finds that India has resumed directly or indirectly importing Russian Federation oil, the Secretary of State, in consultation with the Secretary of the Treasury, shall recommend whether and to what extent I should take additional action as to India, including whether I should reimpose the additional ad valorem rate of duty of 25% on imports of articles of India.
Well, for more on this, we have RT India's Ridhima Kedia joining us here in the studio. Ridhima, what more can you tell us as far as this particular story is concerned? And more importantly, will the oil purchases from Russia, will it continue or will it stop completely?
You know, this is exactly where trade, geopolitics and energy supplies collide. The White House has been very clear that, the US is going to keep a very close eye on India's purchase of Russian oil directly or indirectly. Now, Washington also says it can, in fact, review whether the 25% tariffs on India, which was imposed earlier, can now be reimposed. New Delhi, meanwhile, stays firm that commercial decisions are not for the government to make. In fact, Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has, reiterated that India is diversifying its energy sources and including, purchases from the United States as well. But decision on commercial energy purchases are outside its purview. Take a look.
The buying of crude oil or LNG, LPG from the US is in India's own strategic interests as we diversify our oil sources. But the decisions are taken by the buyers, by the companies themselves. So the trade deal doesn't discuss who will buy what and from where.
You know, the India-US joint statement on trade, it didn't mention Russian oil specifically, but experts do think that oil is going to, make up a big part onto that $500 billion trade target that both the nations have set up, which, will be achievable in the coming future. Now, under the new deal, India will cut or eliminate tariffs on US industrial goods and a wide range of agricultural products too. India's exports to the United States, like textiles, shoes, chemicals, machineries, aircraft parts, auto components, and also generic drugs could potentially rise. But oil imports from the United States may form a significant chunk since, India's energy demands are increasing and India is very much open to diversifying its energy sources now. But there are also expectations that some of Russian, energy is going to keep flowing into the country despite US pressure. And, for example, Nayara Energy's Gujarat plant, for instance, that, has been refining Russian crude for a really, really long while now. But you remember that the refinery is almost entirely dependent on Russian supplies. So it may not be in the position to really end the purchase of Russian oil. Now, how will India balance this to keep, energy supply steady and secure remains to be seen.
What is also quite interesting are the numbers, the data, because India's imports of the Russian crude, it has surged sharply since 2021, isn't it?
Of course it has. Back then, it made up to less than 1% of India's imports. But in 2024, everything's changed. Imports peaked with Russia accounting for nearly 40% of India's oil basket. And not just that, in 2024, in fact, Russia became and remained India's top crude supplier, crossing 2 million barrels per day. In total, since 2022, India has spent more than 205 billion euro on Russian fossil fuels imports. So I think the number speaks volumes about the kind of history and the partnership both the countries have had. And that's what I got to say.
Absolutely. Ridhima Kedia, thank you very much for getting us all those details.
Oh, thank you.
Meanwhile, we are also joined by Mr. Sumit Ritolia. He's the lead research analyst at Kepler for some insight on this particular story. Mr. Ritolia, thank you very much for speaking with RT India. Firstly, How do you see this entire situation at this moment? Is the United States, is it using these trade talks to quietly enforce its own foreign policy, especially on a country like India? Because if that is the case, then what should be India's response?
I think what Ridhima said, I think we'll go by that. Like Indian government has also notified that as of now, whatever the document you guys were showing that the tariff might get reimposed, but we need to follow what the government of India has been equivocally saying that they will keep on diversifying and look forward the need of 1.4 billion people rather than going directly by whatever the US has been saying. And again, going forward, like Indian refiners don't buy anything from Iran, crude oil, because it's a sanctioned entity and it's Indian government policy that we will follow the same. But as of now, since last year, August, we have been seeing the pressure increased on Indian government by US and EU. But as of now, still, I think it's holding back. And though we have seen that volumes have declined a bit, I will not say a bit, we have seen a majority drop. Like we were importing, the near highs was around 1.8 million barrels per day. As of now, January is just around 1.7 million barrels per day. So we have seen a reduction of 40% still, but I don't see a near-term halt of crude oil imports from Russia, though India will keep on diversifying the barrels.
You know, we have been highlighting the data that Kepler has provided. In fact, a lot of that oil is actually legally available. So the question at this point is, why should Indian refiners then go on to pay more when cheaper oil is legally available?
Yeah, like still Russian oil is not sanctioned. And let's talk on data and like whatever Indian refiners are buying apart from Naira, like even Naira is buying majority of these cargoes from non-sanctioned legal entities. So, and again, like I will again reiterate about what government of India policy has been. It's stand by diversifying its oil, catering to India's need, and also also from the Kepler's point of view, we have seen reduction. Like one of our note published on 3rd of February, we see near-term imports around 1.1 million barrels per day of Russian refineries till early Q2 because see, trade deals in terms of crude happens around 6 to 8 weeks before any crude parcel has to arrive in any of the refineries. So it's not like plug, switch and off scheme. You cannot cut off the supply overnight. It takes time, 4 to 6 months. So near time, we see increased diversification and Russian oil imports to flow because we are actually in a situation, it's more about balance rather than barrels for now. So yeah, Russian volumes is expected to flow unless there is a strict policy guidance from government of India that we will not be buying Russian barrels. That is very unlikely given what the geopolitics we are at the center of the stage. Yeah. But yeah.
You know, what also doesn't really surprise me, Mr. Ritolia, is the fact that much of this rules-based order, it apply only when the United States writes these rules. Because what you are essentially doing is literally putting a country like India under quote-unquote surveillance. The question is, can strategic partners then publicly pressure each other without damaging the trust?
Okay. It's a good point, but yeah, at the end of the day, see, India's import around 85 to 90% of its crude oil. So it needs an upper hand, and with you cannot say like you need to buy from this or that. So, and India has been diversifying its crude oil barrels since importing crude oil barrels since long, and like from last 2-3 years, and Indian refiners have pressed up buying from Canada, Brazil, even Cuba, even Argentina, deep in Western African countries, and I see that continue to happen.
Yeah, you know, hypothetically, if at all India actually bends today on oil, what is the next red line tomorrow, according to you? Is it agriculture? Is it dairy? Just trying to understand that.
I will not be able to comment on that, to be honest. But again, like our view is that Russian oil barrel is expected to continue to flow, given we might not reach the volumes we have seen in 2024.
But do you agree? But do you agree that it will continue to flow?
Yeah, near term, there is no doubt like it will not be flowing.
Okay.
Because data speaks itself, so yeah.
Mr. Ritolia, is the United States, do you feel that it is underestimating India's domestic political compulsions on fuel prices? Do you think that is also the case?
Again, like if you look at since 2022, like the peak of Russia-Ukraine war situation, like when the global barrel crude oil prices were skyrocketing, but Indian refiners were shielded by cheaper Russian barrels, and like the prices domestically here didn't shoot up, and like that was one of the reasons why Russian barrels still today, like though we have decreased, it still remains one of the top suppliers. So
Yeah.
so cheaper barrels do protect Indian refiner margins, and also more than that, like it arrests the inflation that is expected to come, like when you buy costlier barrels, and then it has to be passed into the different customers.
Mr. Ritolia, a final word from you. Should India accept the higher costs just to keep Washington comfortable? And more importantly, does India have a choice?
Again, see, it depends on refineries to refineries. And as what the commercial minister also said, the purchase decisions are different based on each refinery configurations and all. But as of now, based on our analysis, we still see Russian crude as one of the most economical foreign situation. But again, you need to look at, like, we still buy 85 to 90% of the barrels. So there are at times where geopolitics and trade relations do come into your sourcing strategies. But again, we see near-term Russian oil will continue to flow, but not at that length like what we used to see at peak.
All right, Mr. Sumit Ritolia, thank you very much for speaking with RT India.
Thank you.